This video will provide instruction on your first 20-point problem. In this first problem, we will record basic transactions using the fundamental accounting equation, which you first learned about at the very beginning of Accounting 100. To begin this problem, open your book to page 26 and open the file as denoted at the top of the page in parentheses. This file is called ptrans. In this problem, we will show how financial position is affected by transactions. We will prepare 3 basic sole proprietorship financial statements. We will learn how to back solve for cash balances. We will alter the worksheet to accommodate additional transactions. And finally, prepare a chart. In case you have forgotten the fundamental accounting equation, it's shown at the top of your template as assets equals liabilities plus equity. Just a refresher in case you need it. Remember that assets are things of value. There are many assets, but this simple problem only uses 3 of them: cash, accounts receivable, and office supplies. Liabilities are debts or monies owed to creditors. As college students, your debts may be many, if you are anything like I was when I was going to school. But in this problem, your only debt is entitled accounts payable. And finally, there is the equity category. As I hope you remember from Accounting 100, there is such a thing called the equity umbrella, which encompasses the capital account plus revenues minus expenses. This means that if the company earns revenue, in this fundamental accounting equation, those revenues will be shown as an increase to the equity account. And in contrast, expenses or costs needed to support the revenues will be shown as a decrease to equity. Finally, any drawings or amounts taken out of the business for personal use will be shown as a decrease to capital. Remember, we are not using any debits or credits in this problem. Instead, we are focusing on the fundamental accounting equation and asking ourselves whether the elements of the equation were affected, and if they were, whether the accounts were increased or decreased. So let's begin. The author has done the first transaction for us. The owner invests $9,000 in the company to start the business by opening a business checking account and depositing $9,000. As noted in the problem, cash goes up and capital goes up. Remember that under the separate entity concept, the owner's records and the business's records are 2 separate and distinct entities. We are recording these transactions on the business's books. We are not recording them on the owner's personal financial records. One more suggestion. Later on in the problem, the author will ask you to do a set of financial statements. So I would encourage you to add a column, or even use column I, to write a short note describing the transaction. If you wish to do this, you will have to unprotect your work. It's up to you. I'm going to unprotect mine. Let's do the next 2 together. Transaction B states that the company, Woody's Web Services, paid rent for June in the amount of $3,000. What effect does this have on the accounting equation? Well, since an amount was paid out, cash is definitely going to go down. So we'll go to the cash account and enter minus $3,000. What other account is affected? Well, the equation always has to be in balance, so think about that. What was the $3,000 spent for? It was spent on rent expense, and expenses will cause the equity to go down. So we'll enter a minus $3,000 over here in column H. And knowing that I'll have to prepare a set of financial statements, I'm going to write a short note in column I, remember I unprotected it, to let me know what the transaction was for. That will make our lives easier when we get to the requirement to do the financial statements. Okay, let's do one more together. Transaction C says the company purchased office supplies, stamps, pens, etc. on account for $1,980. This means that we went into an office supply store, something like Staples, and came out with supplies promising to pay the store within a certain time period, usually about 30 days or so. So what effect does this have on the accounting equation? Well, we came out with office supplies which have value, so I'm going to go find the office supplies asset and increase it by the set amount of $1,980. Our cash was not affected because we actually didn't pay cash for the items yet. So what else should we do? Well, accounts payable or our debt went up, so let's increase that liability account now. After every transaction, go down to the bottom and make sure that your equation is in balance. If at any time your equation is not in balance, then you've made an error in recording the transactions. And again, keep in mind that the equation always has to be in balance. Make sure as you work through the problem that you answer any questions the author asks you. For example, the author asks you a question in requirement 4 and has you do a set of financial statements in requirement 5. These questions, especially number 5, have significant point values associated with them. So make sure you do each part of the problem to receive full points. A strong suggestion: when you do requirement 5, take a copy of your completed work and think about what goes on each financial statement. I would encourage you to make a separate tab or worksheet in your template to answer the book's question. When you complete requirement 5, I would also encourage you strongly to prepare the set of financial statements on your Excel spreadsheet, since after all you are in a class to learn how to use Excel. Remember that when you do the income statement, or the first financial statement that's prepared, you are only concerned with revenues and expenses. Remember that all of these components are being run through the equity column in column H. Once again, make sure you do all parts of the problem. Use your turn-in sheet as a checkoff list to ensure that you have all parts of the problem completed and in the correct order. Again, use headers as described in previous lessons to help organize your work. The use of proper headers will make your life and my life easier when it comes to the submission and grading of your work. Feel free to use the discussion board to post any general questions that you think will benefit your class. You can use the chat room to chat in live time with your classmates. If you have a specific question for me, please send me an email. I read emails several times a day and will reply at my first opportunity. Be clear in your email what your specific question is. Remember that during the class orientation, clear guidelines were described for your emails. In the subject line, you should include your last name and also include the class you're in and a brief summary of your questions. With over 200 students and 6 classes, I need to know exactly who you are and what class you need help with. I look forward to reading your updates.